This is just one segment in a multi-part series analyzing all of Persona 4 Golden. Don't worry, you aren't missing out on anything if this is the first part that you're seeing, but if in the end you end up enjoying this, I ask that you please support the channel any way you can. I make all of my money from YouTube and Twitch, and this is how I do it. I live off of this. Please support me. Thank you, and subscribe, and all the other videos when they come out. Thanks for watching, see you next time. Alright, no. Anyways, Kou Ichijou is one half of the forking strength social link in Persona 4, the other being Daisuke. This particular fork is part of a total of 4 social links that you have a great chance to miss out on purely based on your decision to pick one or the other. But unlike the girls who share the sun, which are Yumi and Ayane, Kou and Daisuke's relationship are intertwined with each other as they are good friends, which somewhat makes talking about their links separately complicated. I still think that it does best justice to both of them to examine them mostly separately though, so I will be doing that in this segment as I have in Daisuke's. If you choose basketball as your sports club in Persona 4, you get Kou Ichijou. The first impression of Kou in his first rank is accompanied by the semi-distracted basketball team during your introduction to them, stating them as goofing off. After the initial practice, Kou formally introduces himself and lets you know that he's happy to have another person interested in basketball on the team. It's already obvious from every other corner of the game, but Inaba is small, and not always in a homey way. It seems like they lack even enough people here to ask another basketball team for a proper match, but that's something that, while implied here with the scant 3 members they show on the screen, it's going to be something that's more important later on. After Kou's introduction, Daisuke introduces himself in a very short and formal way, stating that they go way back. Kou takes this opportunity to joke and say that he's sick of seeing Daisuke's face. Already, from Kou's aesthetic and how he treats people in his first link, it gives a proper, strong impression of his character. He seems to be the sort of crossbreed of jock and pretty boy without really teetering entirely into either description, and also lacking some of the stereotypically negative traits. Kou comes off as a generally casual, jokey, but passionate person. Someone who will get in people's face, but not really be doing so seriously. There's already this surface well of traits that he has, and I think it makes things a little difficult to predict in terms of which way the link is going to go in the future from here. In other words, I think it's a really solid start. Next, we get to know Kou's disappointment with the other basketball team members here, as he laments wanting to practice more, but feels that the other members decided it was way too tiring and went home early. Lastly, Kou complains semi-sarcastically about how, due to him staying later, he always gets stuck with cleanup while the other guys go to parties, and how he wants to do that. You assume that it's because he has to stay late, but an extended thought on it would imply that he's only blaming this thing he clearly enjoys sarcastically, while something else may be actually limiting Kou's life behind the scenes. The most obvious thing then would be his family, but we don't technically have an answer yet. This mix of sarcasm with a tinge of truth, and a diversion from real topics with made-up problems to consider, places Kou as an immediately layered character in a way so straightforward that you might miss it. It's natural, especially with lines like, "I love balls." I love balls. Alright, scream at the Fujos harder, why don't you? But really, this introduction for Kou feels so well layered, so casually, and so conversational that it's no wonder that so many people told me upon discovering that I hadn't played the link, don't worry, I've played it like 3 times now, that I had to do it, and that it was one of the best ones. As an introduction goes, it feels really natural. So after Daisuke and the protagonist help Kou out with cleanup, all you need to do is head home until your next link. The second link, Kou asks you out to eat, but you don't actually end up going. Daisuke mentions how a girl had made sweets for Kou once, and while he admits he likes sweets, which traditionally is seen as more feminine in Japan, he dislikes that she affectionately calls him Kou-chan when he says that they're just friends. Clearly this girl has a different idea of their relationship, but the real thing that we're meant to latch onto here is the affectionate name Kou-chan. Chan is an honorific in Japan that signifies a sort of cutesiness when attached to men. It can be used sarcastically as a way to tease men or endear them by their wives. It can also be used as an overly romantic way to display affection. Classically, Chan, though, is used for young children, or sometimes by teenage girls to each other. There's a whole list of other places that it's used, but hopefully these examples will fill a certain type of image. A child. What we're meant to attach here is that Cole feels uncomfortable with being seen as something cute or endearing rather than someone with respect, demanding, someone powerful. Powerful in that he has the agency that young kids would typically lack. Being called Cole-chan subtly makes him feel infantilized, which, while we can imply here, is really brought to the forefront later on in his link. They have introduced the theme of Cole's struggle before the main acting problem itself, and disguised it, like Cole did in the last link, with a false pretense about not wanting to be seen as romantic with her. It's great writing, again. Something I also want to praise is the translation here, choosing to use Japanese honorifics rather than trying to translate it into complete English. That's something that I generally love about Atlas translations, and any other show or game that does the same. They are in Japan, honorifics make sense, and they offer far more context to the character than a full translation ever could bother to. To give an example, some other shows would probably translate Cole-chan as Coco, which just sounds cringy and yucky, or maybe translate it as My Little Kou, which, like, sure, kind of implies the infantilization subtext, but still sounds too silly to take seriously. Nobody would ever say that in English. It cartoonifies this character in English in a way that we don't see in the original Japanese, and also debatably muddies the message even worse. As this is just one video in a large series seeking to analyze all of Persona 4 Golden, leave a like and comment, by the way, if you're enjoying so far. Eat the subscribe button or something. I felt that this was the best place to interject my feelings toward this translation preference, since this whole large series aims to analyze every aspect of Persona 4. There's little pet topics, basically, I wanted to cover, and this was the perfect place for the translation point. Cole also mentions here that he hates his name, which is a flash of unfiltered honesty, but as to why, we'll get back to that later. Rank 3 picks up after finishing cleanup and planning to go to Aya, but then Cole remembers that he has personal stuff that he needs to take care of, and he dashes off. This isn't him being sly or ditching us, he genuinely did forget, but Daisuke fills us in on the real insight to Cole outside of school. Yu and Daisuke end up going to Aya anyways, and Daisuke mentions the house of Ichijou. Cole lives in a small house next door to his parents, by himself, giving the impression of wealth. Daisuke also mentions that they are very distinguished and traditional in their viewpoints. It's even implied in their name, Ichijou, meaning the first article, first street, or number one. It was also the name of a famous emperor. There is an air of superiority there. It seems the current head of the family is Cole's grandma, and she doesn't approve of basketball. His grandma believes basketball is barbaric and non-proper sport. This is likely meant to represent a sort of old xenophobic mindset toward Western culture, since basketball comes from the West and is associated with a lower-class hobby. The common uncouth, uncivilized man, while something like Japanese kendo or judo is precise, sophisticated, and much more structured. Daisuke mentions how due to his grandmother's mindset as head of the family, Cole has been forced to quit many things since he was a child. This, of course, explains his oversensitivity toward being called Chan. He feels crushed, being forced to give up things he enjoys because he's looked at as a child rather than his own man, his own person who can make his own decisions. We'll find out that there's even more to that later, of course. Daisuke says he comes to you in confidence here because he wants you to help him keep Cole in basketball, if the time arises where he's trying to be taken out. Not give in to his family's pressure. Honestly, all of this would be enough setup already if this was a typical social link, but Cole's main conflict has still yet to even be introduced still. As a small aside, something that I'd like to mention as well for his link is the book dates though. For Daisuke, if you return to your room on certain dates with little exception, you can do the book dates. But for Cole, the optional book events are very specific, and sort of canonize a timeline for these book events within the social link and story of the game. So we're going to look at each of those and see if they add anything to Cole's story. The first link demands you be at rank 3 or lower, and that you have finished the bathhouse dungeon on 529. After all that forward, you're probably expecting something grand to come from this first link, but not really. This link reinforces the usual relationship of friendship between Cole and Daisuke, with Daisuke being good-hearted and a bit fumbling, and Cole being a teasing wise guy with genuine curiosity for his friends. The main thing this does do is become the first scene to imply that Cole has a crush on Chie, something that is later confirmed in Ai's social link, should you be doing Cole's link in tandem. I think it's important to look at the context we understand Cole's struggle in at the moment, and then know how that relates to Chie. Cole, someone surrounded by luxury and prestige, who wanted to break into his own self through basketball, but feels the thumb of his family on top of him, probably admires Chie's brash, free-acting nature. Whenever they run into each other, he asks exactly what she's out doing, and she confidently thinks for a moment before saying that she's training. That sort of brash confidence and freedom to make up what she wants to do on the moment is something Cole probably finds extremely attractive, feeling unable to gain the confidence in himself to do so in his own life. So it does actually give us some better insight into his character, beyond being a fun bit of trivia whenever you ask your friend, "Hey, did you know someone canonically has a crush on Chie in Persona 4? In other words, I think this irritatingly obtuse scene to access is done very intentionally in understanding Cole the best that you can. Rank 4 picks up with the basketball practice as the introduction of Ai Ebihara as the reluctant team manager. I already talked about Ai in my analysis of her, so if you haven't watched, go check out that video for my full analysis on her. If it isn't out at the time that you're watching it, but it's out. I know it's out. Go watch it. Subscribe, and it will be. Cole and Yu finally go grab Aya after mentioning it in nearly every link so far. He opens casually, talking about how the food had been calling him in his dreams ever since he had to bail last time. Daisuke asks straight out, "How did it go?" And Cole responds sarcastically, "What, my dreams or my family?" Which keeps up this consistent bait-and-switch sort of way that Cole interacts with his troubles and generally jokes around them. He states it's complicated, mentions the story of high society, things that he's been dragged into over his life, the arranged marriage events and the balls. He laughs, saying how silly it is to imagine him there, but that if they ever meet his family, that they shouldn't mention to his parents that he eats at Aya at all, or even that he talks the way he does. Now, this is also something that I think was best left fairly directly translated rather than trying to elaborate on this in terms of showing a crazy way that he speaks as somehow strange or informal. At worst, some shows, games, series, etc. that I've seen have overdone this child or teen dialogue by making it more messy, throwing in some weird idea of slang into the characters. But that way of emphasizing this would have just missed the point. It would have made a joke of Cole's character. The point isn't that Cole speaks with slang, it's that he's a normal kid trying to be himself. There's nothing weird about who he is or what he's saying at all. The point gets across without making major changes to the dialogue, and without needing to somehow westernize the idea of the multiple formality levels of the Japanese language. This does reinforce what we saw a bit, though, with the optional Chie scene. He wants to be himself and do what he wants, but he doesn't like pressing against the boot heel or getting himself in unnecessary conflict. Sometimes, when those two things are stressed, it's hard for him to know what to do or pursue a course that makes him happy. You get the feeling, though, that even though he feels restricted, that he still feels indebted to his family. They feed him, give him a place to stay and live. They give him an allowance. They allow him to do so much and do so much for him, so he doesn't want to cause too much of an issue for them. I imagine many Western people, although this mindset is definitely not exclusively Western, might think, if invested in Cole's conflict, well, he's their child. Their goal is to foster him into the person that he wants. He didn't choose to be born under their house and their rules, but they're the ones who took the risk of having a kid. But the game sort of addresses this possible rebuttal as well, with the big reveal for what his link is actually all about. Kou Ichijou is adopted. His dad was unable to have kids, and since their family line had passed on for hundreds of years, and they didn't want the generation upon generation to end, they didn't want the family name to die, they adopted. In a way, they saved Cole from the orphanage by taking him into a rich house full of nice things. He felt the pressure and the blessing of inheriting as the head of a family almost by pure chance. But the real conflict, and why he wants to be nice to them, goes even deeper than this. Turns out years later, while Kou was in middle school, and 2 years prior to him in the story, his dad did end up having kids. He had a baby girl, after all. Suddenly, Kou is starting to wonder if his family cares what he does at all anymore. He had been raised as someone they needed, to a kid who was adopted for a purpose that is a non-needed purpose anymore. Not to say this is how Kou's family feels, but the presence of this biological child makes him wonder what his purpose even is anymore to them. If they even still want him as their family. If he's anything but an unnecessary burden on their lives and their wallets. As a possibility to bring shame to them and their family. The next rank, Kou doesn't come to basketball practice. After it ends, you see his shoes in the shoe locker, and you go look for him. Eventually, you find him on the roof. Here, he talks about how he feels that he's lost his love for basketball. How it's not his family, actually, that's keeping him from doing basketball, surprisingly. But instead, his family gave him their blessing to do whatever he wants. This hurts, though. It seems while Kou does like basketball, for a long time, it has represented his independence from his family, who he is as his own person. A way to carve off something for himself outside of his adoptive family's customs. Now with the boot heel taken off, he almost wonders if they care at all about him, if they forgot he was there. Their kindness actually ends up reinforcing Kou's insecurity, shown slightly in the link prior. Suddenly he's free to make his identity anything that he wants, but the person that he had been trained to be over his entire life is unnecessary anymore. He has the freedom to be who and what he wants, but no longer knows what he currently is. When you offer doing something fun with him, he jokingly mentions going on a group date, which is actually something fun that Kou sets up in Daisuke's social link to make him feel better. So it's fun to get that back and forth reference, showing that regardless of the link, Kou's ways of handling and interpreting things always seems to be the same. On a meta level, it's good to see that sort of consistency in writing for characters. Back to the point, Kou appreciated you looking out for him, and promises to be back to practice soon, but he mentions how he just wants a little space. How he has some relatives to meet, and how he feels sick of putting on a face all the time. Maybe Kou's real self and his facade have begun to meld, making him wonder which parts of his identity were truly his after all. He hates being made to wear the mask, but feels abandoned when he can't wear it at all. It doesn't seem to make sense to him. This is the understanding of Kou that they intend for you to have in the second book club scene, which takes place 2 months later at 7:17, implying that this is a struggle Kou has been wrestling with for a while now. The segment itself doesn't add up to anything that we don't already know. Kou likes Chie is dense to that fact, Daisuke is bad at academics, and so on. For the next link, he mentions something on himself, that he's really short for a basketball player, something normally seen as negative, but how his process of working past the tall guys and making those baskets anyway always make him feel like it's something that he can do better than anyone else. But instead of comparing himself to you, Daisuke, or the other players, he says he can do it better than his grandma and his little sister. It's not about ability to Kou, it's about the role. It's about the purpose. Being needed, filling a space made for him. And it becomes apparent that this is why he carved out basketball as the space outside of his family custom. Then it comes back to Inaba. Who cares how hard he trains, or if he fills a role? He doesn't even play basketball games. They don't even have enough members to do it. He'll never make a name for himself or go anywhere with this place in life. The role is useless. In fact, he's only in Inaba because that's where the Ichijous live. So even as he feels abandoned in his purpose and being granted his freedom, he still feels restricted in making anything of those freedoms. Kou feels like he can't do anything. Nothing that matters, at least. Kou sadly leaves, having the rest of the social link with you and Daisuke. You fill Daisuke in, like he did with you earlier in the link, and Daisuke is convinced that he needs to set up a skirmish game to get Kou to really reignite his love in basketball that he felt that he had. The next rank is just that. Kou is surprised to see an opposing group there and at practice ready to be played. Daisuke tells him that he knows that no matter how hard he trains or feels that he isn't going to get anywhere, that Kou still has him, and he still has you. He wants Kou to know that he doesn't have to do it alone, but Kou's frustration isn't really about basketball. Anyone paying attention at all can see that. It's about the sentiment under that. Even though he's starting to feel like the life that he was built on, the person he was made to be, is being swept out from under him, that the bonds he made are still genuine. And that he doesn't have to exhaust himself looking for an answer. He has his friends, who will share his burden gladly. They lose the game, as you might expect, with 2 people who know basketball, 1 soccer player, and 2 slacker players. But after some usual jokes and chiding remarks, Kou says that he does feel better, at least less alone, now. This is the point where Kou feels comfortable to say much of what has been sewn into the story up until now. He asks directly. He's not related by blood. He won't be their heir anymore. So, does he even have a purpose? Kou is challenged rightfully by Daisuke with this. So what? Just because they're not blood, they're not family? This is after Kou mentions the kindness and understanding they've shown recently toward him. Kou doesn't take it lying down, though. He fights back. He essentially says, if there's no difference, then why are they already hiring tutors for the 2-year-old daughter? If it's really no different, why have they suddenly switched their focus of their training to her instead of him? And honestly, fair. Kou isn't meant to be in the right here, but he does have good valid reasons here. It's really nuanced. As much as I like Persona, this link has really gone above and beyond the norm for building this complex story in regards to realism, depth, and character detail. It's a nuanced struggle, and a unique one at that. Whereas much as I like the other links, minor conflict characters like the delinquent group in Chie's link or the teachers in Eddie's link, these accessory characters are often a bit one-note and nearly comedic in their levels of extremity. I don't think that drags down those links at all. They serve their purpose well, but it's amazing how even a 2-year-old that we never see has such a realized impact in the story and through Kou's eyes, and how Daisuke can, using his sense of the situation described by Kou, be led to disagree and argue with him. This is some of the best writing in Persona 4. The argument quickly turns to desperation, though. He drives home, he doesn't have to go to gatherings anymore, he's allowed to quit his lessons, they don't expect anything from him anymore. He asks Daisuke, how doesn't that feel like he's been replaced? It's awkward. Daisuke feels like he may have spoke where he had no right to, and Kou feels like he's yelled at his friend who cared about him above all else in this situation. Neither of them feel good. If he can't find it within himself, and his adoptive parents don't seem interested in granting it to him, he thinks he will find who he's supposed to be through his biological parents. He ends the social link deciding to check out the orphanage. The next links are this action and resolution. He gets a letter from the orphanage with flowery words from his supposed parents that he never met, that they had left years ago. A note stating that they had actually died from illness, but they called him Kou to mean good health and prosperity. The letter doesn't contain any names or clues as to who they were. He mentions how nice and similar the orphanage was to whenever he was there as a child. People remembered him. He felt cared for. Initially, he feels he had no one anymore because of this, with a reminder that Daisuke and you are there for him. Thing is, though, this letter? This was all a lie. Meeting Kou again, he feels listless, with no biological roots to ground himself to, and a feeling that the self that he was a mask no one needs him to wear anymore. He feels lost. Then he realizes, even worse, that the letter is a fake. For a 10-year-old letter, it should have had more wear and tear, but it seems to be brand new. His reaction to this is actually, strangely, happiness, though. He doesn't know who his parents were. Likely, they didn't want to be found even if they were still alive, but they weren't the ones who made Kou himself. The person he recognized at the orphanage who took him in, who raised him. The Ichijos who chose him of all kids and treated him as their own for many years. Even his own mother, who, while not around, still chose to give birth to him under some circumstance. Someone was there to create him, foster him, and push him along in his life. His life had been filled with the kinds of people who, in some large or small capacity, allowed him to live there and become who he is. He mentions thinking he had no roots, but it wasn't true after all. Daisuke mentions how he's been trying to tell him that, but it's important that Cole came to the answer himself. He laughs through his almost teary red eyes, and that reinforces that through it all, this subtle aspect of his personality was still there. That even through the changes of interests, senses of purpose, perspectives, the same Cole was experiencing all of these actions. He is himself. As if to drive it home, Daisuke asks if they want to go for a swim, and Cole remembers doing that as kids with him. That's the thing. Daisuke has always been there with him, all that time. Rank 10, Cole decides to keep doing basketball and continue the lessons that his parents had always given him, but had now told him were optional. He mentions even that he asked his parents outright if they wanted him, and with an emotionally loud family moment, saw for himself that care that his mother and the rest of his family has for him. He feels somewhat of an embarrassment and shame over how he feels and felt over this arc. He is who he is because of the people that shaped him, and who he is can't be taken from him. The experiences he's had, the time he spent. He talks about how he got caught up in his immature idea of finding himself, that he saw painted in the artists that he appreciated, but that his idea of self was totally wrong. Finding yourself is first and foremost about what's within. It's first and foremost the you. Cole is one of the few representations of somebody who was left at an orphanage, adopted, and then raised in that environment that I've seen portrayed in games. And alongside being extremely well written and nuanced, it does one of the things that Persona does best when representing walks of life. It represents a person, not a stereotype. The fact that Cole is adopted is central to his eternal conflict and overcoming his personal feeling of identity and purpose, but it's not even told to the player until the 4th rank of his social link. Not because there's any pacing problems, but the opposite. Cole is a full person. The amount of traits, descriptions, details, and aspects to his character could fill a page if you wrote descriptive traits out one by one. He's not the poster boy of adoption. He's not the poster boy of high society, or of being a brother, or of a high schooler. He's not the poster boy of a basketball player. They went out of their way to even make him short after all. He is a person with personal conflicts who occupies the experiences and opportunities that he's been given in his life, both in and outside of his control. Persona's good at that. Although here has to be one of the best examples Persona 4 has to offer, especially for a side character that shares a 50% chance with another side character on an arcana that you could easily play the whole game without even starting. Finally, to mention as well, the 3rd book club event happens only when you have Cole at rank 7 or higher and concerns Cole and Daisuke coming to visit your room. Cole takes time to analyze your living space, the place that you call home. When Nanako comes in, he assumes and asks if Nanako is your little sister, mentioning how she's probably sad when you doesn't play with her, and how they should all have fun with her. This is reflective pretty directly to the listless grasp on his family and home and what it really meant to him, as well as the eventual grappling with wanting to be a good brother to his baby sister in the future. These series of book club events are a whole wellspring of projection from Cole, which is really heartwarming stuff and shows the way that he interprets things. Great stuff. So finally, let's look at his name and arcana. We covered Ichijou near the start, but Cole, mentioned in the link as well, stands for prosperity. However, this was just flowery language given by the fake letter. Something else his name describes is a great powerful bird. Something Cole mentions to the player earlier on in his link is that he wishes he could break free of his shackles and be like a bird. That birds had it made and could fly as they please. He wanted to be that. And I think that the idea that his name refers to the great, prosperous bird elegantly flying to the heights that he decides best reflects the character by a long mile. Kou Ichijou, as I've said 500 times, is a person who shares the strength arcana in this game. The arcana for strength generally follows with Cole like this, from what I can tell. Strength is classically depicted as a woman taming a lion, but the strength is the relationship between the two, rather than one controlling the other. It generally has to do with control and expression, and usage of an animal nature or carnal desire. With Kou, it could be the idea of keeping to your pack, something people and very much animals do normally. Kou struggles with having confidence in who his pack is, and if they even consider him a part of theirs. In alchemy, the taming of the red lion is the way of self-realization. Kou learns to not let the insecurity to focus on his adoption or not being a biological family member to find his place in his family, and through the taming of that, the feeling reaches self-realization. As you might assume, the negative polarity is how we find Kou with his insecurity and doubts running rampant, causing issues for his own self and view on life, throwing them into question. By the end, he is in the upper polarity, with the strength to coexist with his inner feelings, control the faulty insecurities, and find his place among the people who love and care for him. Strength sometimes refers to better health, where previously there wasn't any. This could refer to how Kou's adoptive father considered himself to be infertile, but after Kou's adoption ended up having a baby girl after all. In a professional environment, strength in the lower polarity could refer to work ethic that isn't necessarily being taken seriously. In Kou's case, this fits well with his efforts in basketball, not being taken seriously first by his parents, and then by his family, and then by himself. I hope this didn't lean too much in on summary compared to other segments. I tried to provide analysis from a character and thematic standpoint as well as the meta standpoint for the translation and character writing, but there are so many facets of Kou's character I thought that were worth considering that oh boy, this ended up being a long segment. If you enjoyed this video, please help others see it by engaging in the comments and liking it, as well as sharing this video wherever you can. If you want behind-the-scenes content updates and additional material from both my channels, or just to support me, because this is my whole life, this is my whole job, literally, I live and die based on the support of this channel, then please support me on Patreon. Till next time, I hope you enjoyed. Take care of yourselves.